to begin.
You're listening to Magrito Podcast Network, celebrating the culture of Chicanos and Latinos one story and voice at a time. Listen to more Magrito Podcast Network shows over at magrito.net.
You're listening to KQBHLP, Los Angeles, California, 101.5 FM, a community service of the Boyle Heights Arts Conservatory, broadcasting live on your FM dial and streaming on kqbhla.com. We're in studio with the one and only Viva Padilla, and she's coming into the mic.
Hello.
Viva, thank you so much for making the time for making a fourth special appearance on the show.
Has it really been 4 times?
It's been 4 times. 4 times since like 2017
I feel
or
like it's more than that because you had another podcast. And has it really been?
Yeah, I counted today. I was like, let me see how many episodes we've done. So far, it's been 4.
Yeah. It's we know each other for a long time before you even called it Social Primates.
Yeah,
I remember
exactly.
It was something else.
Yeah, the people listening this Live Locals. It was podcast.
Live Locals. Yeah, it sounded like a 800 number. I remember that. I remember it was like, call in Live Locals.
And it's just 3 Hispanic guys, 3 Mexican dudes.
Exactly. But, smoking weed or whatever you were doing.
Exactly. Yeah, in a massage parlor looking spot. But Viva, thank you so much for making the time. The last time I had a conversation with you was on February, I think, of this year.
Yes, it was. I think so.
Let me see. I got you.
Sorry, the mic fell down.
Sorry, he's got a little technical problem here real quick. We're just taking care of.
Yeah, I think I figured it out. Just hum something as I try to fix this. I don't think it's going to work because it's like a specific little thing I got to do, but I'll just hold it. That's fine.
Do that. But going back to our conversation in February, you were still going through the stuff with TL Corporation. And then a month later, little did we know, was that you guys won.
Yeah, we won in March.
Yeah, exactly. A month later, everything turned out in your guys' favor.
Oh, yeah. It all, after 1 whole year of fighting to stay and keeping our businesses and keeping our homes, we managed to win the appeal fair and square through the city. And yeah, it was a hard time, but we made it through and we made it happen. And
then a few months afterwards, 2 months, June, you start getting like this, basically like retaliation from this corporation, right? This developer. Now, tell me a little bit about that. I mean, you're off you're off that high that you guys won, that you guys have made this historic thing happen, and now you're facing this pressure to either. I mean, are they giving you the option to pay or just like bounce?
Oh, no, they just gave me a 30-day notice. They did give me the 3-day notice too, but it was kind of just a fake 3-day notice. It was not even like a real 3-day notice. So that one's not even. We're not even discussing that one anymore. So right now, what they're really trying to defend is a 30-day notice. Okay. So the 30-day notice is a notice to vacate, which means they're not asking you to pay or vacate. They're not saying that you have the option to pay. They're basically saying that they're going to end your tenancy, meaning that they don't want you there anymore. Like they don't want you to continue paying your rent. They don't want you to. They just want you to leave, essentially. So they gave me the 30-day notice in May, which was about a month and a half after we beat them fair and square. And now it's September, and they did file an unlawful eviction because I decided to stay put. I decided to fight it. And now we're going to be facing each other in court. So the trial is just about to begin, actually. So
that's the crazy part. You think it's over, and then next thing you know, you're facing this all over again. And at this point, in extreme measures, because at this point, there's no, it's you fight or that's done, And is it just for you specifically in this case?
They just went after me. Yeah.
That's crazy. You want to be the voice of something. You kind of want to, put yourself in a position where you can help unify these people, and then next thing you know, they're trying to shut you down. They're trying to keep you quiet. Basically, that's what they're trying to.
They're so mad. They're so upset that I mean, think about it. I mean, we basically canceled their project. They were so excited to bring in their dumb little building. They were gonna, they were gonna be so proud of what they were gonna build, and they were probably hoping to appease their lenders and everybody. They probably borrowed a bunch of money, and they were probably hoping to buy more properties around the area. and just kind of be like the glorious savior of Boyle Heights, and like just kind of make the neighborhood different, completely different from what it is, you know, kind of like do a little York Boulevard cosmetic Boulevard. Yeah, right. Like a little Highland Park wannabe little, you know, enclave in Boyle Heights, and we kind of ruined that whole plan.
Well, I mean, you know, first of all, they're doing it in Boyle Heights. What, you know, what are they going to expect? There's going to be pushback.
That's what I'm saying. They didn't know. Did they not know? They must have not. Yeah. They must have not read about us.
And then try to get away with it because, I mean, again, in Southeast LA, maybe. You know, and here's like, no.
No, here, I mean, luckily, I am surrounded by many great people that have put in the work over the years. You know, a lot of my friends were here fighting gentrification 10 years ago. In Boyle Heights, in Northeast LA, in Highland Park, in all these different areas. And they kind of set the stage for not allowing these things to happen. The only thing that's kind of changed now, because it is 10 years later, is that developers, corporations, even politicians have gotten a bit smarter about how to kind of come into the neighborhood. They are kind of more... I guess trying to play the game, you know, trying to really play us. So I think that's the harder part now with fighting these developments, is that we really have to be informed, and we really have to go through the city and appeal the projects, and we have to like get everything documented through the city and not just protests. I mean, we got to do all of it. We can't just do one thing. We have to go through different avenues to get results, and it's really demanding work, you know. It really is. It's not just, hey, let's go have a little protest. Like, you really got to get involved and see what you can do to stop it, you know, because they are getting really sneaky about how to do it and how to get away with it. And these are huge corporations. These aren't like white hipsters with funny hats, you know. These are like people that have a whole plan for your whole neighborhood. They have a whole plan for the block. They have a plan to buy out politicians and to, you know, we saw that with Weezar, how easily he was collecting money from developers. So I mean, there's, unfortunately, when you have money like that, you can just buy everybody off.
Yeah. The interesting part to me, though, is being able to collectively convince people in these neighborhoods that this is a problem for them. You know, a lot of the times that you feel a little powerless, thinking when you compare things like, oh, I gotta face off with a developer or a corporation, it's easy to be like, you know what, I'm gonna give up. I'm just gonna take a cash payment. You know, like, you know, they're gonna pay me off so I can get out of here. Let's go. But it's like, that's not how it is. Like,
you know, I wish they would have paid me enough to leave so I can go on vacation and just chill out and be like, wow, this is nice. You know, selling out feels so good. You know, but they made it so hard to want to sell out. Tiao didn't even give me a good offer. They, you know, I know it was a slap in the face when they made me the offer of, they wanted to give me 30 days to leave and $5,000. And they wanted me to sign a fee waiver. I mean, not a fee waiver. They wanted me to sign a waiver, an NDA, basically saying that I was no longer going to talk crap.
Like, go after them or anything.
Yeah, like I was no longer going to be making memes. I was no longer going to be like, you know, putting up murals. And, you know, I was no longer going to go on podcasts like these and like speak out. So I said no. And they did not want to give me more money. They did not want to they didn't want to make a better offer. And I told them, okay, look, give me $150,000, 1 year free rent. And that's it. And if you want me to sign a waiver, you know, this is what I was thinking. I'm like, if they want me to sign a waiver, like, I will sign a waiver for $1 million.
Cue the Austin Powers.
Exactly. I was like, if it's going to be like where you want to shut me up for the rest of my life and I can never speak on this issue, I can never talk about Tiao, I can never, you know, then you're really going to have to pay for that, because I will not just imagine giving up your rights to speak out for $5,000.
Yeah,
that's ridiculous.
That's a slap in the face.
That's a slap in the face. Yeah. That is a slap in the face. And so we rejected their offer, and me and my lawyer, we rejected their offer, and And yeah, so now we're going to jury trial. We're going to have a whole jury that's going to decide what, if this was a retaliatory eviction or not.
Yeah. And now what does this mean for the other tenants in this, same space per se, or in the same block? Like, what does it mean to them after, I guess, what you're going through in the meantime?
Yeah, I've talked to all my neighbors, the business neighbors, like El Apetito, who I've been working very closely with, and Finessa Beauty Salon, who's right next door to me, and then Cubo Laboratories, which is a vintage store 2 doors down from me. And it turns out that all my neighbors are kind of feeling the same pressure, to not mess up. They don't want to do anything that could cost them their tenancy. Yeah. So right now they're very on edge about well, what if I pay late? Are they going to evict me too? What if I do something and they get upset and it causes them to evict me? So they're hoping that we win this, because we're still in the fight together. I mean, we stopped the development. I think we did the hardest part already. We really did the hardest part. The hardest part is done. We stopped the development. We stopped them from destroying that corner. We stopped them from essentially whitewashing that area and destroying the history there of the músicos norteños and everything. We stopped that, right? That was the hardest part. But I mean, we have every right to defend our businesses. We have every right to defend our employment and our place, the place that makes our livelihood. So my neighbors are definitely worried that they're next.
Of course.
And I don't want to just walk away from this fight and be like, well, I'll just take the money and go. Because if I were to do that, then they could just go to my neighbors and give them the same crappy offer.
Exactly.
The same treatment. And I just don't think that's right. And
now, from my understanding, El Apetito got designated as a LA legacy business or something, right?
Yeah. So while this whole thing was happening, I was like, man, I got to do something to help my neighbors kind of, have some permanent place in the community. And the LA Legacy Business program began in January 2024, just this year. And we were working on the application while this whole thing was happening, and we managed to get it. And what that basically means is that that El Apetito has resources that they can, let's say they decide to try to evict them too, or they try to raise their rent or something like that, so if they try to do that, then El Apetito can make the argument oh, well, we're a legacy business, so it's not going to be that easy to get rid of a business that's 30 years old, 35 years old. And that's going to be a lot harder to argue, to try to get rid of a 30 plus year old business.
Yeah.
So El Apetito does have some type of protection in terms of that. So let's say they were to go to court for an eviction, let's just say, then they could say, well, we're a legacy business. Why are they trying to remove us? This is racist. This is wrong. This is, So yeah, there is some type of protection for El Apetito, but they are on month to month too. So Tiao could theoretically be like, well, we'll just give them a 30-day notice, and then we'll see them in court. So they could do that to each and every one of us, but it's gonna make it harder for them to get away with it now that El Apetito's legacy status. And we're just trying to, I think at this point, we're just trying to make it harder for them to do whatever they want.
Of course. Yeah, no, there has to be that pushback. It kind of reminds me, I had this little story. During the pandemic, my parents, they're just renters. So they were about to get kicked out because I think they were 3 months behind during COVID, right? Global pandemic.
Oh, wow.
And they gave them, because they were late for 3 months, they gave them a 14-day notice to pay the backed up rent. So I remember just being like, what? My parents were obviously nervous, full of anxiety and all this stuff. And I ended up deciding to kind of pick up that conversation with the company's called Jervis Property or something like that. And I started emailing them on behalf of my dad because he only speaks Spanish. So I was like, hey, they can get, some sort of support that there was hardships because of COVID. Something that they didn't make the tenants in that whole place aware of, and it's like, so you don't tell the people that this option is there. And until I emailed them and say, hey, well, they passed this for Los Angeles, they're like, oh, well, we have to talk to the main person to see if they can do it. And it's like, what? So I started pushing back, going back and forth for maybe 2-3 months, just kind of fighting him on everything. Like, why is it, there's this policy, why are you doing this? Or, give us, whatever. At the end, they decided that they didn't want to talk to me anymore because I wasn't the person on the contract. So I was like, okay, cool. So, I mean, the situation continued, but now I was giving the information to my dad so he knows what to say to them. But, it showed me that they were not for anybody just kind of like pushing back, especially if you kind of knew what was going on.
Yeah.
And this is in Southeast LA. So underrepresented immigrant families for the most part, I mean, maybe like 70% of the people there are renters. And Jervis has like a grip hold on this neighborhood. So it's like, how many people were not aware of this? How many people lost their homes? How many
people did he do this to and they could have gotten help and they didn't know about it?
Exactly.
But this guy kind of abused it and was like, well, this is my moment to kick everybody out and increase the rent and do whatever I want.
Yeah, exactly. And, it kind of, I saw some relation to that with LA Public Press has been doing this thing called the Tenants Association.
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
The podcast stuff.
Super cool.
Yeah, super cool, super informative. And through their stories, I heard that there was obviously other people in that same position that I was in fighting for my parents' behalf.
Yep.
Other people who didn't have that person who can translate for them that was there. And it just makes you think like all these millions of people, right? Not just people in my city anymore, but now millions of people in LA that had to face that during this pandemic.
Yes. I feel like that's kind of like what happened with us in the Tiao Corporation development fight. That I was the only one that could, I mean, my neighbors on both sides only speak Spanish. And they were confused about when they were supposed to move out. They thought they had to move out already.
Damn.
And I had to tell them, like, look, no, the notice doesn't say that you have to move out. It said that you might have to move out in May, but it doesn't say you must. So I had to learn the whole process of going through the city and filing the appeal and like figuring out what our rights were myself. Like I had to figure that out myself, and then I had to translate that over to my neighbors. But I can imagine, like, if I wasn't there, then what would they do? It's like, where do they turn to? And then they try to turn to Kevin De Leon, and Kevin De Leon didn't really do anything at that time. So there is a lot of, gate-kept information from us. It's not readily available. There's nowhere that you can go to, let's say, walking distance to be like, hey, I have this problem. What can I do? And I've learned throughout this whole process that I need to go find that information myself.
Right.
It's not enough to hear somebody else tell me, hey, you have no rights. Because this whole time, I've had organizers and people from tenants unions and people that have a lot of experience. They've told me, you don't have any rights. You're a commercial tenant. You have zero rights. You have no rights. You have no rights. You're not going to win. You have no rights. They kept telling me that. They kept trying to drill that in my mind. And I was like, no, this, I don't buy this.
Yeah.
I have to go figure this out myself. And I mean, there is a truth to it that if you're a commercial tenant, you don't have as many rights as like a residential tenant. I feel like residential tenants, you have very explicit rights. Commercial tenants, you have to go find out what your rights are. You have to go looking for your rights. You have to go find answers. You can't just, it's not like for residential tenants where you could just Google it and be like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. Like
for commercial, everything is so hidden. Everything's put away, everything's like, it's such a different world. So when I came into this, I thought that I had no right to fight this unlawful eviction. I was like, well, I guess everything is against me because I had, according to what everybody is saying, that there's nothing I can do. But I literally went to the LA Law Library in downtown LA, and I sat myself down and I read through the eviction defense manual myself. Okay. That's what I had to do. I was like, okay, and everybody is pretending to be, or everybody is acting like an expert. Everybody that I was talking to was like, well, this and that. And I'm like, well, everybody sounds like an expert, but let me go directly to the source. And I read through the eviction defense manual, obviously not the whole thing, but I mean, it was a really interesting read. So I kind of like sat there for 2 hours, pouring through every detail. And I learned a lot. I learned that I do have a defense, that I can defend myself as a commercial tenant in terms of this unlawful eviction. And I have evidence of other commercial tenants in the past that have beat their landlords in retaliatory eviction cases. And there is a code, there is a case law, there are things there, but they're hidden away. And I feel like people don't even know that information. They didn't even people that are in eviction defense, they don't even know that information. So I had to kind of like dig and kind of learn these things myself. And that's been really empowering for me, because in the beginning I was definitely scrambling for answers. I was definitely not sure of like what I could do and how to go about it. But after learning and kind of informing myself and seeking information, I feel like this is the right thing to do.
Yeah. No, I mean, again, going back to that feeling of, or just feeling, when you're going through these events, you feel like powerless. Like you get the notice and you're like, oh my God, now I got to figure out how I'm going to stay here, how I'm going to survive for the next month, or what am I going to do? Yeah. And it's an ugly feeling. It's definitely an ugly feeling. And I can only speak for that on behalf of the situations that I see my parents do, when I used to live with them. Like the stress, like just not sleep at night, or just seeing them cry because they're overwhelmed and not figuring out a solution, Yeah. It sucks that we're still in a situation now that we still have to continuously fight. We have the stuff going on in Chinatown, Lincoln Heights, we had the stuff in Highland Park, and slowly it's going everywhere. But I feel like kind of how like they put it on the Tenants Association, it's ticking time bomb. It's a matter of time before everybody goes on some sort of rent strike and really, I don't know, tries to shift the changes that we need.
Well, I can definitely say that we're giving them a hard time.
Yeah.
We are definitely giving them a hard time, and they don't like it.
Yeah.
So I think that we're doing good in continuing to speak out and continuing to fight, continuing to spread information and spread facts, about like your rights and things like that. That's so important. Like, I think that when somebody tells you you don't have any rights, you should never listen to them. You should never listen to somebody who's trying to disempower you.
Yeah.
Don't listen to somebody who says you can't fight this. Like there's no way for you to win. I think that every human being has a right to their livelihood, to having a home, to having a dignified life, to fighting for what they think is right, to fighting, really, really fighting for it. Not just to be like signing a paper that says, I disagree with this unlawful eviction. Like, I have every right to speak out. I have every right to write about it. I have every right to make memes about it, So we have that right, and we got to remember, like, don't let anybody tell you that you do not have the right to speak out.
Yeah. The powerful thing about, in this case, yourself going through all this stuff, and then at the same time bring this information to the community, you start making leaders in the communities as well. Like, you start getting people interested that never thought in their life that they were going to be an activist or some sort of organizer. And then before you know it, you have La Vecina coming in, and like she's like, in the picket line. It's like, that's crazy.
Yeah, my vecinas, dude, have been so amazing. Even the abuelita Torralba, like, they get so worked up about this, and I love listening to what they have to say, because they also inform my strategy. They're like, well, they did this and they did this to us, and I think they're gonna do this to you, and you better watch out, and you better do this, and you better say this in court, and me están como mandando and regañando at the same time, so and they're like, they were gonna come after you, like, tú sabes que te iban a sacar de aquí, te iban a desalojar, ya lo sabías. And I was like, sí, yo sé, I know, Mom. But they're so sweet, and they're so amazing, because they really believe in me, and they really, they've been pushing me. They're kind of like Rosa from El Apetito, she was like, you know, you should be a politician. Go take over Kevin De Leon's office. Like, you should be in there. And I'm like, dang, I can't see myself being that far into like above the people, you know, because I feel like a politician always kind of sits above and tries to act like they know what's best. I really love being with my people, with my gente, with the community. I like being where the action is, where everybody is. I feel so comfortable there. I feel so happy there. I feel so loved. So at the same time, I am going through something difficult. It is, I think about these things every day. I reflect on why I'm doing what I'm doing and the meaning behind it and the importance. I think about all those things. And it always comes back to, can I do it? Because I feel like if I felt like I couldn't do it, like if I felt alone, then maybe I wouldn't be doing this.
Yeah.
Because it does take a lot out of you, and you do need community to kind of hold you throughout this whole thing, you know. So I do feel like if the community wasn't there, I wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
But the community is there. The community has responded. I can call 10 people tonight and they would all give me advice, really great advice, you know. So, and I know that people were also, they like to hear what I have to say too. It's like what you said. There's some people that are like, maybe I should be a lawyer. Maybe, you know, Viva's going through all this stuff and it's making me want to study law and stuff like that. And I hope that those people really do step it up and take that role in our society to help our people, because we do need the help. Every time I go to court, you know, you sit in the hallways of Babylon and you wait for them to call your name.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, you're looking around and you're seeing people that are worse off than you, and they don't have a lawyer. They don't have representation. They don't understand their rights. They probably forgot to file the paperwork for the day, and their case is going to be going to default, meaning that the opposing counsel, the people who are suing them, are going to win.
Yeah. Because
they didn't know about a deadline. They didn't know about a paper they had to sign. And that, you know, that really breaks my heart.
Yeah.
That's the part where I'm like, I wish I was in a position that I could do more. So what I'm doing right now, I feel like is what I am capable of doing. Like, this is what I have to offer. And I wish I could offer more, and maybe one day I will find that what it is, you know, to give more. But for now, this is what I can do. And no matter the outcome, no matter what happens, I'm gonna just see it through. You know, I just can't sit by and just watch it all happen.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, you gotta put up that fight, which is what you've been doing. And going back to the whole community aspect of it, I think you know, we may not all get along all the time, but I think when we start seeing like the common denominators on things, we start seeing like, okay, we have a lot more hardships in common, you know, and through those hardships, I think we can relate to each other to understand that we're in the same struggle, you know, like we're facing the system here that's working. I wouldn't say like completely against us, but it's not there for our favor necessarily, because sometimes we don't have access to the information itself, you know.
Well, we're definitely not in a world where the cards are for us. I feel like they are stacked against us because they are so they're kind of depending on us not caring or being too afraid to do anything about it. So they're definitely, they know how to exploit us, our weaknesses. You know, they know that we don't have the means. They know that we don't have this, we don't have that. There's a lot of things that we don't have in this structure, and they use that, they abuse that. Yeah,
that's why you know, learning about the programs where, you know, when they're trying to take people out of their homes and they're paying them money, it's like, again, it's one of those, you're exploiting the fact that these people don't ever see this type of money in a lump sum kind of just coming at them. So what are they going to do? They're going to take it because they think that's the best solution. But how long does that money last in reality? Come on, you know, like they're going to throw it on another deposit and another first and last month's rent. And it's gone.
Exactly. And I mean, people think about the option too of if you're going to take the money, it's less stressful, right? Fighting is more stressful, right? In our communities, we already have a lot of suffering. A lot of our people succumbed to COVID during the pandemic. So many of our people in Boyle Heights died of COVID. You know, a lot of our people have diabetes, have all these issues, and stress kills.
Yeah.
You know, it shortens your life. Gentrification hurts people, and it shortens their lives. So I understand. I don't blame people for not wanting to put up a fight. I never blame people.
Yeah, of course.
Because it's capitalism. Capitalism is going to do everything possible for you to stay small and stay in your place and keep being the cog in the wheel. You're not supposed to be anything else than that under capitalism.
Yeah.
So if you can do a little bit more than that, you're already going against it. So I never blame people for the position that they're in.
Yeah, of course, you know, everybody's situation is different, and you know, again, like you said, no bashing on those decisions, but there's a reason, and because of these reasons, we can understand a little better in how we're being exploited. You know, and us knowing this is already we're a step, in a sense, a step ahead of knowing that when those come knocking on our door, we know we're like, no, this is not gonna work for us.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And now you said that your trial starts this week.
Yeah. So tomorrow it starts, but it's not gonna be like we're basically gonna get kind of like the outline of the trial. It's gonna be like a lot of the details of what's gonna happen, like the updates of what's gonna happen in the trial. So it's not gonna be you're not gonna see me take the witness stand tomorrow. You're not gonna see Will Tao take the witness stand tomorrow. That's not all gonna happen until later, maybe next week. But basically the clock is ticking. Like it's going to start as soon as we get over everything tomorrow. It's just gonna go, and it's gonna take maybe like seven days to get through the trial, because we're gonna have witnesses, we're gonna have evidence, the jury is gonna be the ones deciding if this is a retaliatory eviction or not. So there's a lot on the line. Yeah, it's like a real drama. It's like a real telenovela here. I mean, jeez, I call it Dos Landlords Un Camino. I don't know. It's like my life is just so crazy right now. I just, you know, I need to find ways to just make fun of my own situation.
I mean, it's gonna level out those stress levels.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, I mean, from my understanding, the jury is usually like random too, right? It's random people.
Yeah, they're gonna choose random people. I don't think it's gonna be anything complicated because it's just a unlawful eviction. It's not gonna be like about anything else. So I think for sure they're gonna have people like renters in the jury, but I really don't know. I don't know what to expect.
Now, you just mentioned that you don't know what to expect, but in terms of the community support, like what does that look like to you? Like just being able to go in there and voice like support, what does that look like?
Yeah, so I've been inviting people to come through and sit and watch the trial unfold and kind of see for themselves how the whole process happens. Because I'm coming into this not knowing anything. I've never been to trial. I've never done this before. I've never been before a judge. I'm not a criminal. But you know, like I've never done this before, and sitting in the courtroom, you already feel small. You already feel insignificant. You feel dumb because you don't understand what they're talking about when they're talking in codes and they're using their jargon. So you don't really, it's not a pretty place. This is where your soul goes to die. You know, this is not where you want to be. But I think that with the community coming in, they can understand that this isn't something to be afraid of. This is something to be like conquered in our minds. Like, okay, if I ever needed to do this, there's no fear to go in front of a judge. There shouldn't be fear for me to be able to go represent myself and have agency and have autonomy and speak up for myself and like stand for myself. I should have no fear in doing that before a judge and before a jury and before all these lawyers and all these attorneys, all these people. So I think that it would be a good benefit for the community to get involved and to kind of see how the whole process happens. And they can see for themselves that this is this is supposed to be a fair process. And whatever the outcome is, they can decide for themselves, like, okay, was that fair? Was that right? Like, what do we feel about it? Like, we're invested in this.
Yeah.
Where it's not just Viva versus TL Corporation. This is like the community versus developers versus the future of our communities, the future of like what tactics developers, corporations, politicians, they're using against us, and what can we do to fight back? Like we should not be afraid to take these people to court.
Yeah.
You know?
I like how you said that right now, where you give the people the ability to come in, listen, and then kind of make up their own idea of what's going on, because you're not going in there just trying to like convince them like, hey, just support me, which will be a great point, but at the same time you're giving them the tools to be able to critically think and say, hey, look, this is how this is affecting me. Like this is just a small speck of what's going on just in LA,
Well, I mean, if they're going pro TL, they should not show up. All right. If you're pro, TL Corporation, don't show up. You better be on my side. But yeah, I think that I think it's also a good moment to watch everything, like the system, watch its mechanisms, watch the way that it ticks and moves and the way that it maneuvers, the way that it handles the truth, the way that it handles facts, the way that it handles your rights, your what it deems worthy. Is it going to deem me worthy, my business worthy of existing? Is like all these questions I think would be really interesting for people to come and kind of like reflect on, and like these are questions that they can take back to their community and to their organizing groups or to their own kind of philosophy on what their political beliefs or their organizing principles. Like this is I think it can help them really be the eyes and ears of the people that check Babylon and say, no, we're not okay with this. Like, no, this isn't working out for us. Like, this part doesn't work out for us. We want this to be different. We're not happy with this. We don't like the way that it handles truth. We don't like the way that it doesn't deem this worthy. Like, we can start to make those accusations and those declarations against this system that wants to essentially keep us crushed.
Now, when you guys initially got started and trying to organize, right? What did that look like for you? Because I mean, again, there's people in different areas that are going through similar situations, but they don't know where to start. And I feel like a lot of the times conversations like this give people in those positions at least an idea of, or a stepping stone, where to go. So what did that look like when you brought it up to everybody else, or when you guys first started having this conversation?
I think that the good thing is that I already had a friendship with my neighbors, the neighbors on both sides. So, like with the beauty salon next door, sometimes I'd go get my haircut and then we'd chat. We'd be like, oh, how's this going? And, ¿cómo va todo? And they would, like my neighbor would ask me like, oh, I got this noticia, no sé qué es, me lo puedes explicar? And she showed me the notice of like when she needed to move out, and then I had to explain to her about what it meant. And then that kind of, I realized that I didn't receive that notice, that I was never told that I had to leave, and because this was early on, this was before we fought. They gave everybody a notice of when they had to leave, and I didn't receive that notice. So I was like, wait, what's going on here? This is really weird. Like, you received that, I didn't receive that. Like, what's going on? So that's kind of like where it all started. And I actually saw Will Tao. He came to my store, and this was like way before we fought. This is like 2020, early 2023. Yeah. Okay, or like late 2022. And it was like early 2023. And I asked him, I was like, hey, so my neighbors got this notice saying that they're gonna have to leave in May. Like, I haven't received that notice. Like, can you explain to me what's going on, and clear it up? And he was like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. You guys don't have to leave in May. And I was like, okay, but their notice said May. So what's up with that? And he was like, oh, no. It just says that, we're going to be doing this development and you might have to leave. And I was like, that sounds really fishy, you know? So then I started talking to my other neighbors and they were telling me about, you know, the things they heard. And I realized that I wasn't being told any of that.
Yeah.
So I think they were being told something because they don't speak English. And I wasn't being told anything because I was the, you know, little bookstore girl that is like, you know, she reads books, you know, don't tell her.
Don't tell her.
She knows.
She's gonna know what we're doing.
Yeah, she'll read she'll read the notice, you know. So yeah, I think that's how it all began. I was comparing notes with everybody, and I was kind of like, what's really going on? And then we just kind of all stayed in touch. And of course, you know, when I would come to work, I'd see my neighbors every day. So it was kind of like, if we had any updates, we'd talk to each other. And when it came time to kind of organize together, we really felt like it was important to like just be one unit and not let anybody kind of take away our voice, because I feel like there were certain situations or certain times where people were trying to come in between us. Like, oh, well, your neighbor said this, and like your other neighbor wants to do this, and like your neighbor doesn't agree with you, and like what kind of friendship do you have with your neighbor? Like, trust me, I went through all this stuff, you know.
Well, divide and conquer.
Divide and conquer. See, so like I was like, you know, we should just be united. Let's be united, the neighbors, and I helped unite, you know, some of my neighbors. Not everybody joined our colectivo, but that helped us so that there's one voice coming out, one voice. So for sure, starting a colectivo is key, you know, uniting is key. And that just kind of happened spontaneously because there was so much pressure to do what everybody else wanted us to do. Everybody had an opinion on what to do. Everybody wanted to tell us, do this, do that, do this. And we were like, well, nobody's listening to us. So the only way people really started listening to us was when we created the colectivo. And once we made the colectivo, then people were really taking us seriously.
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, a lot of people underestimate the power of you know, collectively agreeing on something a lot of the times. I had an experience where I'm currently living. It's there's a property owner, of course, and they started trying to like push all these things like, oh, you can't have kids running outside. Again, this is just it's not a commercial. It's just a regular residential. There you go. They were like, yeah, you can have kids going out, you know, in the driveway. You can't have music after like 7 p.m. and all this stuff. And I was like,
oh my God.
But I took a look at this and I was like, you know, they're like straight up going over our just rights as tenants, you know. The city ordinances say that we can't have music from 10 to the early hours. So why is the property owner saying that we can't have it after 7? It's like, we're abiding by what the city says. So I drafted up this letter and I sent it to them. I was like, hey, look, this and this and this, pointing out different things and providing the codes and everything to this stuff. And they responded with like, oh, well, you know, like, we'll follow up with another letter. They never said another letter. And it's like, what are you guys trying to do? Like, again, trying to manipulate people and just kind of force them into doing something that's not abiding by what we have as rights, right? As these things that are set to protect us.
And they're such cowards about it, because once you tell them like you're full of it, then they're like, they just disappear. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, they
pretty
disappear.
Funny, actually.
They drop it or they change the conversation on something else. And similar thing, you know, a couple months later they tried to charge me like for moving in, and I was like, you know, I've been living here for 2 years. Like, why are you charging me now? And this happens after I send the letter. So it's like, okay, you're trying to do some sort of retaliation because you feel like I'm attacking you.
Yeah.
So I sent it back and I was like, I've been here for 2 years. Why are you telling me now? They never responded again. And I never had to pay anything extra. It's like, no, like, but that's the funny part. It's like sometimes you feel scared to stand up for yourself until you do it. Then you realize how hard or how easy it could be to continue standing up for things that are just, you know?
Yeah.
And at that point, you just kind of become more confident in the way you approach things. Even as just as a consumer, tenant, or whatever category you fall into, we have some sort of rights that have been set there, you know, for us. But yeah, it's just about learning and taking the time to actually do some research and pull information out so you can provide to them and say, hey, look, this is what's going on. Like, you're trying to tell me something else. And that's when they like, oh, crickets, you know?
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing, or maybe the tragic tragically funny thing about the way our society is structured is that there's this looming power dynamic that exists in our everyday life, and that's the landlord. The landlord is the one that's right there, and every time you see him, you're like, oh my God, I'm gonna owe this guy so much money next month in or a couple days. You know, that's like the biggest power like imbalance that you see and feel every day. Aside from your job. But your job, at least, like, you're producing for your job, and you're like, you know, you're getting something in exchange for your labor, even if it's peanuts. But your landlord is just a parasite. Your landlord is just living off of you. You're paying his mortgage, you're paying his bills, you're paying his dumb little car, you're paying for his mistresses or whatever, his vacations. This guy has it good. The landlord has it good. All he needs to do is bug you. And,
send you a letter.
You know, send you a letter. Yeah, send you a paper. It doesn't even have to be properly done. And he feels like he's on top of the world. You know, he feels like he's the man. He feels like he has dominion over the future, your future.
And disregarding any experiences or any, you know, troubles that you may be going through. You know, that's the worst part.
And some of them will pretend to be like caring, to be like, well, I'm such a caring landlord. You know, I've done charity work in Africa, you know, I've done this. You know, in college, I was a part of this, you know, homeless, you know, whatever they did, feed the homeless. And, you know, they did all these things that got them these little points, you know, in their lives and in their circles and with their parents. You know, they did all the right things for their communities. So, of course, they're not a bad guy. Of course, you know, I'm not a bad landlord. But the moment that you know, are actually going through something and you say, hey, I can't make the rent. That's when they just turn on you. And they're just quick. Like, no, they're just like, oh, where's my money? You know, where's my money? They really do act like they have their hand in your pocket the whole time. And it's sad because they do. You work so hard, 40 hours a week or more to make the rent, and most of your money goes to the rent. And the landlord didn't have to work 1 hour for that.
Exactly.
And you did. And it could be your passion. You're working your passion. You're doing like me. Like I sell books. I do all these events for the community. And guess what? I got to give my money to TL Corporation.
I was doing some bad math earlier. But my parents, they've been in the current spot in Cudahy since 98. Cudahy. 26 years, right? 26 years, and I used it an average of what they were paying, what they've been paying, right, considering inflation. And in 26 years, they've approximately paid maybe like $350,000 to $400,000, which is like a cheap house in Ontario or somewhere in the Inland Empire.
Whoa, I'm still calculating that number. Oh my God, in Cudahy.
So it's like, you know, most house, you know, maybe the mortgages or the terms are what, like 30 years, 35 years. My parents could have already paid off a house somewhere in an empire, but they're still renting, you know, and this is just one household. And it's Jervis again. So Grip Holding Cudahy, how much money are they making? Come on.
It's, dude, we pay so much as renters. We pay so much and we have so much uncertainty. Like my mom, she just had her house paid off like maybe like 3 years ago or so. But her mortgage for all those years was like $800, $700. And it was for a 2-bedroom house with a big yard, with a big driveway, you know, a beautiful little house. But us as renters, $1,800 for a 1-bedroom, $2,000 for a 2-bedroom.
And half a bathroom.
And like, you still got to pay everything else, electricity and water and trash or whatever your landlord puts on you. And like, that's it. And your landlord doesn't even want to fix anything.
And they still want to, I mean, I had a bad experience once when they're like, hey, well, you know, I moved out. It was a $2,000 deposit. I took photos of me cleaning I moved out and I cleaned the walls and everything. And the guy's like, oh, there was some markings on the floor, so I'm charging you $1,000 from that. I was like, what? And I took photos. Didn't hear from him again.
Smart man.
He did charge me $250 for a key that I lost. Come on.
He's
like, come on. But whatever, I got part of that deposit back. But it was, again, just those tactics that like, oh, you lost your key. Well, I have to make a whole new key that cost me $2. Charge you $250.
Yeah.
Come on, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just I mean, I hope more people wake up to this. I feel like maybe, I don't know, maybe it's just my algorithm just showing me more people being active in this. You have a really
good algorithm.
But it's helping me kind of, again, build a better picture of where we stand as communities and how much work we have to do internally so we can all educate ourselves and know how, where we can start to fight this kind of stuff off,
I think that we're all capable people.
Yeah.
But I think that they drill in us that we're not smart enough, that we're not good enough, that this and this. Like, no, we're all smart, we're all capable, we're all talented, we're all beautiful people. Like, we deserve so much.
No, I agree. Now, for people to, I mean, we're going to be hitting that time real quick. That went by real quick.
I know. There's so much more to say, so much trash we could talk about landlords. I love it. We could keep going. Honestly, like when I was talking about a landlord right now, I know who I was talking about. I was picturing him in my mind. I know which landlord I hate right now.
His ears are ringing right now.
Yeah. I hope he's not tuned in. Because he's gonna send me a letter. Watch. He's gonna be like...
But, no. So, I mean, hopefully, things turn out for... In a positive outcome for you, Viva. I've had the opportunity to know you for a couple of years now, so I know you're
10 years.
Yeah, it's been a long minute.
Time, yeah.
So I know there's that resilience in you to continue regardless of what happens. So
I like to call it resistance.
Resistance. Okay, yeah, that's a
resilience.
Sounds
like oh, she's just
going through
the little engine that could. No, I'm not the little engine that could. Like, I can without having to be the little engine,
Yeah.
Ya soy, ya soy. Tenemos todos like the DNA of resistance within us. We are those people. Our ancestors were those people. So there's no doubt that this is why we're this way.
Yeah. We got to remember that because that's super empowering, once you realize that there's a whole history of the resistance just on our backs, helping us support through the movements,
Exactly. I don't have that. I don't have a doubt about that at all.
Yeah. Well, Viva, thank you so much for making the time. For people to stay up to date with the progress or the story as it continues to unfold, or where can people?
Well, people can always find me on Instagram. That's pretty much the place that I'm like most active. So it's Anochka, ANOTCHKA on Instagram, and then you can follow the El Apetito Colectivo, El Apetito Fineza Colectivo Instagram page that has all the main story about the fight and everything, so you can find us there. And just keep tuning into Social Primates, and I'm sure I'll be on again next year or whenever the next telenovela episode comes out. I'll be here.
You'll be able to catch a story here.
Yeah, this is where you find all the drama. This is where you get all the chisme.
Well, Viva, thank you so much again.
Thank you, Eddie.
People, you'll be listening to KQBH-LP Los Angeles, California, 101.5 FM. And we'll see you guys next week.
Adios.